Well, the World Economic Forum says that even as the global green energy transition is slowing, India, China, and some other nations are helping to lead the way by crafting clear policies and creating investment opportunities. CNA's Roland spoke to Roberto Bocca from the WEF. Now, he emphasized the need to streamline regulations to help emerging markets transit to renewable energy.
The Energy Transition Index has shown that in the last few years, actually, the energy transition is slowing. But clearly, the region that are leading is China. The region that is leading is China. But there has been fantastic progress also in India and Brazil. So we have seen a progress in many of the countries where most of the demand is growing. That is a good news.
And what lessons do you think can be learned from these countries that are leading the path forward?
So there are a commonality, and one of them is to have the enablers in place to allow investment to come in, and policy that are in place will definitely allow that. So have clear objective and clear roadmap with policy that enable investment actually to come.
There has been significant progress when it comes to renewable energy adoption, but many countries still struggle with scalability. You talk of enablers. Give us an example of how this can be adopted in developing countries that might want to scale up.
Yeah, it's very difficult to scale up at the size that we are talking about because, we have a strong energy system around the world, also in emerging markets, but this has to grow exponentially because of the more demand coming, especially in emerging economies. There is a lot of more demand coming in. So every time you put in the installation of a solar or wind, this is just going to cover the additional demand, but it's not covering for the demand that was already there. So the challenge is double. It's not just cover the growing demand, but also covering the previous demand. What is very, very clear is that policy that enable speed in execution. In the country where we are today, in India, they have been very good in taking away administrative burden. So acceleration to get permitting to deploy this renewable. So that, if you ask me, one option is really that one. If you are able to deploy the investment much quicker.
The US is pulling out of the Paris Climate Accord. That's created significant ripples in global climate efforts. How do you think this decision will actually affect the momentum towards international climate action?
Look, my expertise is more energy than climate per se, but I do think that today the cost of renewable energy, for example, and batteries and others are pretty low. They're actually very competitive. So as far as there is, as long as there is a competitive edge, there is a business case for the energy transition will keep going. And let's remember, the energy transition is not only sustainability, but it's also about energy security and energy affordability. So if the prices are down, more deployment will happen, and that will address the three dimensions of affordability, security, and sustainability.
Okay. You mentioned energy security. That's a critical concern for many countries, especially in the wake of geopolitical tensions that we're seeing and supply chain disruptions with the Middle East tensions and also the war in Ukraine. How can countries balance, you think, their immediate energy needs with long-term climate commitments?
It's a very good question, and each country effectively has to do it. That's why we call it energy transitions, as opposed to plural, as opposite to transition singular. And so, of course, countries have to do that. But I will tell you one thing. If you have more renewable energy deployed in your country, you are less dependent from external factors. So, arguably, also renewable energy is part of security. And so each country will find their balance, but there are a lot of opportunities because today we have more technology that are available. One country might be more nuclear, one more renewable, one a mix of different sources. But I think this is a really opportunity.
Looking forward to the next 10, 15 years, what do you think are the top 3 priorities that the global energy sector must focus on in order to meet climate targets?
In my view, there are one thing that is about, well, you asked for 3, let's see if I get to 3, but definitely one is to create a decarbonization of the current energy system, because we have a big energy system already, and we can help in reducing emission from this energy system. Second is focusing on efficiency. We are wasting far too much energy, so there is the reduction of energy intensity, how much energy we need to produce 1 unit of GDP, if you like, so efficiency. And the third one is, of course, the deployment of the new technology, the renewable energy, but also the system integrated technology that allow really the best use of renewable energy.